The Battle of Adrianople was a clash of titans. On one side, the Eastern Roman Empire was praised for its strategy. On the other side were the Visigoths, feared and determined. This was a time when the Roman army, once thought invincible, was brought to its knees. But when and why did this battle happen? And what were the end results? Let's explore this dark chapter of Roman history and understand its role behind the downfall of the Roman Empire. The Battle of Adrianople, also known as Hadrianopolis, took place on August 9, 378 AD. But before we dive into the details, let's take a step back and understand the context in which this battle occurred. Back in 376 AD, the displaced Goths, led by Alavivus and Fritigern, pleaded to the Eastern Roman Empire for refuge against Hun invasions. The Eastern Roman Emperor Valens, hoping to exploit the Goths as farmers and soldiers, permitted them to settle in the empire as allies. But were their hopes met? The answer is no. As they crossed the Danube into Roman territory, they had to face the dishonesty of the Roman provincial commanders Lupicinus and Maximus, leading to their revolt owing to the hardships they faced. In a state of desperation, Valens reached out to Gratian, the emperor of the Western Roman Empire, in hopes of gaining reinforcements. Over the next 2 years, there was a succession of continuous battles. However, neither the Romans nor the Visigoths managed to secure a decisive victory during this time. This shows how well matched and determined the two sides were. But the tipping point came in the summer of 378 AD, when Valens chose to take matters into his own hands. He gathered additional groups from Syria, his own resources and reserves from the Western Roman Empire and Gaul. Upon his arrival in Constantinople from Antioch, he appointed Sebastianus to regroup the Roman armies in Thrace. Can you imagine his surprise when Sebastianus and his legionaries ambushed small detachments of Goths on their way to Adrianople? This was a classic case of underestimating the enemy. The Goths, led by Fritigern, rallied their forces at Nicopolis and Veroi to counter the Roman threat. Meanwhile, Gratian's army, partly in Pannonia, was attacked by the Lentienses, a part of the Alemanni. After a victorious regrouping, Gratian's army made their way east. Upon hearing of Sebastianus' success and Gratian's victory, Valens was eager for a victory of his own. Now imagine this: Valens, against the advice of his officers and a letter from Gratian urging him to wait for reinforcements, chose to move forward without waiting. Meanwhile, the Goths' leader, Fritigern, sent a peace proposal and requested an alliance in exchange for Roman territory. But Valens, confident of his superior numbers, rejected the proposal without considering the missing Gothic cavalry out foraging. This, again, was a big mistake that set the stage for the historic battle. Before watching further, comment down below who you think has the upper hand in this crucial battle. Let's see how many of you can guess the right answer. Finally, the fateful day arrived. In the early afternoon of August 9, 378 AD, the Roman army appeared within sight of the Gothic camp. This was not a typical battlefield. The camp was a fortress in itself, a sturdy circle of wagons, well protected by a strategic ditch and palisade. The Goths, though outnumbered, were not to be easily defeated. Fritigern, their leader, once again called for a parley. This time, Valens accepted the offer. His men were weary and parched from their march into the blistering summer sun and were not in a formal battle formation. But things took a turn for the worse. Just when negotiations were initiated, chaos broke out. 2 Roman cavalry units, acting without official orders, recklessly launched an attack. However, the Goths rebutted this premature strike and chased the Romans away. And with no other option, Emperor Valens was forced to order a general attack. His infantry was not yet fully prepared for battle. Even worse was that the rear column, a significant part of his force, was still on its way to the battlefield when fighting commenced. This hasty move led to unanticipated consequences, further tipping the scales in favor of the Goths. Now, you might be thinking that the Goths would have scored a one-sided victory, right? Well, that's not the case, because they were against the Romans. In the initial phases, the Romans were doing surprisingly well despite the unexpected start to the battle. Thanks to their superior numbers and discipline, they managed to push the Goths all the way back to their protective wagon circle. However, this initial success was abruptly halted when the missing Gothic cavalry appeared on the battlefield, backed by Hunnic and Allan horsemen. This was something like a chess checkmate that sealed the fate of the Romans. Grabbing the tactical upper hand, the Goths swiftly attacked the Roman right side. This sudden move scattered their horsemen and left their foot soldiers open to a rear attack. Meanwhile, Fritigern's soldiers stormed from behind their wagons, hitting the Romans front on. Trapped with no escape, the Romans were caught between a rock and a hard place. Many fell under the Goth onslaught. Those who managed to break free from this tight spot were chased and defeated by the relentless Goths. Of course, who would be so kind as to let their enemy flee from battle? After all, the Goths had faced enough betrayal and were not in a merciful mood. So, what do you think? Was this defeat the end of the Roman Empire? According to historian Ammianus Marcellinus, the defeat at Adrianople was the second worst disaster after the Battle of Cannae. Tragically, about 20,000 Romans, which made up 2/3 of the Eastern Field Army, died on the battlefield. The loss was not only in numbers. Most of the high-ranking commanders, including the Emperor Valens, were killed in the battle. And guess what? Valens' body was never recovered. Ah, the irony of a ruler who ignored warnings and died in battle without even receiving a proper funeral. However, some reports show that he was gravely wounded and was taken to a nearby farmhouse for shelter. Unknowingly, the Goths set this farmhouse on fire, sealing the tragic end of the emperor. If you know what actually happened to Valens, feel free to comment down below. After their victory, the Goths, finding little pushback, caused chaos across the Balkans for many years. It was only when Theodosius I took the reins as the new Eastern Emperor that they managed to make peace. This agreement let the Goths live on Roman land, but as a close-knit community. This decision by Theodosius had significant implications for the Roman Empire and contributed to the emergence of barbarian kingdoms after the fall of Rome's western domain. A point to note here is that it was the Eastern Roman army that met its end at Adrianople. The Eastern Roman Empire, often referred to as the Byzantine Empire, survived the fall of Rome by more than 1,000 years. Therefore, the Battle of Adrianople can't be seen as the end of the Roman Empire. Rather, it was a temporary but devastating setback that highlighted serious, long-standing issues. Combined with the toll taken by costly civil wars, these issues contributed to the weakening and eventual collapse of the Roman West. So, this was the story of the Battle of Adrianople, a battle that changed the course of history. It showed that overconfidence and poor decision-making can lead to disastrous consequences, even for an empire as mighty as Rome. If you enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Also, let us know in the comments if you want to see more videos on similar topics. You can also check out our previous video on the Shang Empire. Goodbye until next time.